There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey, it's us again.
Yep.
We're back, and it's episode 135.
Yeah, we got Rasputin on this one.
Rasputin and the Romanovs.
Yeah.
I actually was going to do just the Romanovs, but then I was kind of like, well, I'm not sure if that would like extend to a whole show. And Rasputin is related because he was, at their court and like had a lot of influence on them and might have had something to do with what ultimately ended up happening to them. So I figured it would just be kind of a cool narrative to just have a whole
This is
show
going to be a good show.
about that kind of thing.
Jenny's going to be on point, and I'm going to be banging on all cylinders because this topic here is a fucking wild topic. So I'm going to have some shit to say about this,
There is so much crazy shit about
Yeah.
this, and even to this day, again, no one is quite sure how much of it is true and how much of it is exaggerated. We went into this a little bit like on our Countess Bathory show and on our Vlad the Impaler show, because I feel like a lot of the really outlandish stuff, particularly about Rasputin, may have been exaggerated because there was like a lot of reason. There was a lot of people that hated him, and so there was a lot of reason to like fabricate shit about him, like even while he was alive and even after he was dead.
There was still a lot of bizarre shit that was true
but
about
there
him.
was like a lot of true shit that was crazy about him also.
Yeah. And that whole situation, makes you wonder what the hell the Romanovs were up to, to allow a lot of the stuff that he had done.
Yeah, it
to
is.
the Tsar's family, to the Tsarina and all the...
Yeah.
It was weird.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of a strange story. And I feel like, I didn't know them. And it's like, whatever side of it you're on, like, there are really no heroes in this story. It's like everyone's kind of terrible. But, other than the little kids, because they didn't do anything.
They were innocent.
But... regardless of how you feel about it, it's a very bizarre situation, and I thought it would make a really good story. Now, I should say that the reason I've been wanting to do a show about the Romanovs was because of this book, and I have shown this on the show many, many times, because I had this book growing up, and I loved this book. This is Strange Stories, Amazing Facts. Now, this was put out by Reader's Digest, and this came out in the 1970s. Now, before 1991, thereabouts, nobody actually knew where the Romanovs were buried, at least no one in the West. So there were many, many rumors that, some or all of the Romanovs, other than Tsar Nicholas, had escaped. There were a lot of stories, like particularly in the 30s and 40s,
Lots
about
of Anastasia stories.
Yeah, about like people claiming to be Anastasia, people claiming to be Alexei, because those were usually the two. Because even in the 90s, when they did find a grave, two of the skeletons were missing. So that kind of played into all these conspiracy theories about, they lived and like maybe this woman was Anastasia and maybe this was Alexei and all these stories. But, spoiler alert, as of 2007 or 2008, all of the bodies have been found.
They're dead.
Yeah, they were all killed in the cellar.
Yeah, Bolsheviks got them all.
At the same time.
Bolsheviks got them all on the same day.
Yeah, so there was never... So
Most
anybody,
likely.
Anybody that was, later on came along and said that they were... One of the Romanovs was either mistaken or trying to pull one over on somebody.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that a little bit too. And like I said, that was one of the most fascinating things because I think even as a kid, I was like super morbid, as you can see, and it was something I never really grew out of.
That's why she is what she is.
I know.
That's why she do what she does.
Well, I don't know. It's just, I was always a very morbid person, and it's like, I just always was fascinated by morbid things. So when I had that book, the whole story about the Romanov family being gunned down in the cellar, like even the little kids, that freaked me the fuck out. Yeah. And so it really stuck with me. And then I kind of like kept following it over the years. And like I said, it was only like probably 10, 11 years ago that they actually finally found out what happened, because there was a whole big article in there about this girl that claimed she was Anastasia, and all these people that came and said, yeah, it's totally her. And it does kind of look like her, but...
Yeah, Jenny's into some creepy shit. And she has a high creep tolerance.
I have a high creep tolerance.
Yeah, I'm not really like that. I consider myself more of a man of action, with military background. I got no problem with running around and, shooting people. That doesn't bother me, okay? it's just weird shit. She's talking about like necrophilia. She'd be looking into necrophilia cases and stuff. You can go back on some of these old. There was one show I had to walk out of about that necrophilia. I just couldn't take it.
That still makes me laugh when I think about it.
I just don't like that, man. That took me over the edge on that one. That shit just got too damn nasty. Just get too gross, man.
Well, like I said, it's like I can't really explain it, and I guess if you don't, I think I was kind of born that way. I have some kind of genetic predisposition toward creepy shit. I can't explain it any other way because I remember being a really little kid and being like, ghosts and witches and murders, yay! And that was like all I ever wanted to like read about. And it's hard to explain to somebody that doesn't get. It's not like I enjoy it necessarily. Yeah. It's not like I'm like,
just
woohoo.
It doesn't bother you.
It doesn't really bother me as much. It does, but
I think I'm within like the realm of the more of like the normal spectrum. I mean, I can.
Yeah, you probably.
I've got no problem with violence as long as it's like a goal-directed violence,
right?
Or it's two guys or two parties that are willingly, you know what I mean, shooting it out with each other to achieve something. I understand that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can even understand somebody coming back, fucking over somebody else in retribution.
Revenge.
I can
everybody can understand that, probably.
I just can't stand any of that weird, senseless shit. You know what I mean? Like hanging those little girls and like BTK like did, BTK or show. Just I don't understand that shit. It makes me mad. Makes me mad.
It makes me mad too.
Makes me want to kill those dudes when they do that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I feel like that too, but for some reason it's like because maybe it's just because I'm just like, why? What's going on in there? What's going on?
Like I said, it
just fascinates me, like what can go so wrong in someone's brain.
I can't fathom senseless homicide.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Most people can.
Yeah,
I can't.
But like I can go back into the ancient Greece mentally, or ancient Rome in the Roman period. You know, it was a virtue. It was a Roman virtue to just be ruthless to your enemies, as long as you were good to your friends.
Yeah.
That's pretty human. That thing. You know, I can understand that. I just can't understand being ruthless to a person who's done nothing wrong to you.
Yeah, just like a random person.
For some kind of weird
like,
sexual...
hey, I'm going to chop up that person
and
have sex with their head, like
right,
Ted Bundy did.
Doesn't make any sense.
Which I keep reminding people.
And, I hear some feedback from the crowd, they kind of respond the same way. Like, it makes you furious. You want to kill them.
Yeah.
For
I
doing
understand that.
Yeah.
I get furious, too.
Yeah.
But then, in another way, too, I find it fascinating because, like I said, I want to understand what could go so drastically awry in the human experience that would cause someone to do something like that.
Yeah.
That's so outside of our ken of human experience.
And then we got onto that subject of those old creepazoid necrophiliacs digging up people, to take them home. Just fucking weird, man. That's just weird.
It is weird. Like, why would they even occur to you?
I don't know, man. It's just
that's what fascinates me. Why would that even occur to you?
Now, luckily, today's topic really won't be going down there. There is some combat in this one. Well, Rasputin got involved in some combat. He was shot and stabbed and poisoned and
thrown in a freezing river.
The Russian aristocracy, they were not a non-violent people. You know what I mean? They were an honor-based society. If somebody had to be taken out, they did it. If somebody disgraced somebody else, they did it. But that era was like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but like I said,
just saying, the thing with, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words. I guess.
The thing about Rasputin that has always fascinated me. I mean, other than all the legends about him, like the man that couldn't die, and I mean he did, but it took a lot to kill him. And all this creepy shit about maybe he was in this sex cult and all this other stuff, which they don't know if it's true, but there's like rumors about it. But I mean, if you see pictures of the dude. That dude looks like a straight up psycho.
Everything
you can tell just from his fucking eyes.
Yeah, everything I've read about the guy and all the evidence that survives, he shows he exhibits the behavior and the traits of a cult leader.
Yeah,
very much like a cult leader. Now, a cult leader usually there's sexual domination and weird physical abuse involved, and mind games. Yeah. So I'm just going to say that those rumors were probably true.
That's kind of what I'm
that's just the way that's the way that psychological profile is.
Yeah.
Because once they capture somebody's mind and heart, then they start abusing their bodies sexually. You start taking advantage of the shit.
Yeah.
And, he knew the Bible pretty well enough to at least kind of twist things and justify what he was doing.
Even though, by all accounts, he was probably illiterate.
Doesn't matter. As long as you know the memes. If you know the Christian memes.
Well, if you know what to, spew back at people,
you can.
So it sounds like... Because I guess most other people were illiterate, too, so...
Yeah. Didn't matter. Really, when you analyze Christianity, archaic Christianity, you go into a church and you see scenes on stained glass windows of certain scenes from the New Testament. It's mostly what you're seeing. Really, you can boil Christianity down to those memes. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's not really anything deeper to it than that. We've done other shows on the subject. If you to understand more what I'm talking about, go back and look at our Dr. Robert M. Price show, where Dr. Price was on as our guest, and we talk about it. Christianity is not complicated. It's very simple, really, when you break it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a resurrection cult.
Yeah.
Basically.
And the thing that they had, I mean, if he was indeed involved in this cult that he is often accused of, it was just an offshoot of the Russian Orthodox Church, where they took things like flagellation and, kind of sexual stuff to purify.
Right.
Or expiate your sins or whatever. It was
so
that
when you look
kind
at
of
from the Russian Orthodox, when you look at it from the Russian Orthodox angle, it makes a lot of sense that he was telling these girls to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That fits right in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could stretch the Russian Orthodox gestalt into that.
And I mean, the Romanov family too. One, they were very religious, and they were very open to mysticism and other mystics and prophets and things like that.
It was the era.
And also, they were very cloistered. Yeah. They didn't really get out into
they weren't worldly.
They didn't really get out into the real world much. Yeah. And they had a lot of tragedies, or a lot of things that could be exploited. Yeah. And I think that he probably knew how to exploit those weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think Rasputin saw that in the royal family and goes, man, these people are dupes. You know what I mean?
He may well have, sure.
And he just ran through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this guy, Grigory Rasputin, born in 1869, out in the middle of fucking nowhere in Siberia. Yeah. Peasant family, pretty much. Ran a farm or some shit like that. It's funny because they don't actually know much about him, his childhood. There's a lot of legends about his child, he was this hellion and he was a horse thief, and he did very petty crimes and shit like that. But no one's entirely sure if that's true or not.
His upbringing was probably really typical for the time and the place.
It probably was, yeah. Again, they're speculating that he was probably illiterate just because most people of his time and station would have been.
You would have checked out that he was, yeah.
But yeah, that's not to say that he didn't learn to read later on, but they say he was probably illiterate when he grew up.
Yeah, which illiteracy really isn't really, especially back in those days, that doesn't mean anything about somebody's intelligence.
No, of course not.
On an earlier show, I talked about a guy that I knew in Mississippi. He's one of my dad's friends. He was my dad's generation. He was illiterate, but ran a successful business and had secretaries doing most of the work. Yeah. You never would have known that dude couldn't read and write. Well, now, by the time his 40s came around, he did learn how to read and write. Yeah. But he never really used it much. And it was just because of his early childhood upbringing, where he came from. He never made it through school. Yeah. But that dude could make a lot of money.
Well, the thing about it is that when you grow up illiterate, you find ways of getting around.
You got around it, right?
I mean, people are adaptable.
Yeah, and he was super intelligent, and he did it through charisma. Yeah. Basically, he succeeded through charisma, and he was what's the word I'm looking for? He was not conniving, but he was what's a good way?
Sly.
No, there's another word. What am I thinking of?
Does that have a negative connotation?
No, no. He was. Never mind. Keep going.
So story goes that he was leading this life. He may or may not have been a thief. He may or may not have been violent and getting in trouble.
He was cunning.
And whatnot. There you go.
Cunning. That was the word I was thinking of. He was a very cunning man.
Well, like I said, as long as you know how to work around stuff and you know how to delegate, then you can get by. Yep. And like I said, particularly back in these days that we're talking about, late 19th century, early 20th.
There was no technology.
And a lot of people were illiterate, so it wasn't unusual.
You're right.
So
you didn't have to surf the web back then.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So in a way, the society was more accommodating towards you just because.
And in Russia during that time, and especially as a peasant, you probably would very rarely ever even see paper. So what would you need
well,
to
yeah,
write
you
on?
wouldn't need to.
Right.
I mean, your whole life was you probably just lived on a farm and you
The
married
only
somebody
book
and
you'd
had
run
kids and then you died.
The only book you'd run across would be the Bible, and
The
only
Bible.
the priest had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably exactly what it was.
Right.
So, evidently, like I said, he's doing this shit or whatever. Now, he does actually marry at one point. He met a girl that lived in the next village over and married her. Now, they had a bunch of kids, but I think only 3 or 4 of them lived into adulthood, which, again, very common back then, particularly in that time and situation. However, when he was 28 years old, he had some sort of religious awakening, or so he said. Sources vary. Some of them said, oh, he saw, a vision of the Virgin Mary, or he just had some kind of religious awakening where he said, I'm going to go be a traveling, holy man and, go tell people about blah, blah, blah. So at 28 years old, he leaves his wife and kids and goes wandering around.
Like Cain out of Kung
and
Fu.
hanging out with various religious figures and whatnot. A wandering mystic, as they would have called it. Going from town to town.
Nowadays, you might want to call that a bum.
Well, yeah. So
bum.
he's essentially a bum. He's
Essentially a bum.
And like I said, if you see him, pictures of him, because there are a lot of pictures of him, dude looks like a crazy ass motherfucker. So it's like, I almost feel like if he walked into your town and was wanted to preach to you some shit, you would like to sit there and listen because you'd be scared to say no because you'd be afraid he'd be fucking going psycho on you or some shit. I have never seen such crazy eyes on a person as are on Rasputin.
I must admit, when I look at old photos of Rasputin, he's working an angle. He's really trying to look as freaky.
Plus, might have been the drugs.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of like he's a prototype of Marilyn Manson. I mean, he has a rock star thing going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Now that you mention it.
He's trying to me, what I sensed by looking at the photographs, he's actually making a conscious effort to project an image across into the film. And it's very similar to the weirdness that you would find in the goth scene. I think the people of the day saw him as kind of like Marilyn Manson for our generation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? You look at it and go, what the fuck's that? And he was a priest that looked like that.
Yeah.
Which, back in those days, that probably would have given you a little bit more of a, you know what I mean? It would have been a little more mysterious.
Well, he definitely was that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of his appeal. I mean, not saying that he wasn't a controversial figure, even before he got mixed up with the Romanovs. Even back then. Now, people call him the mad monk and things like he technically was not a monk. He technically was not a priest. He wasn't anything. He just he didn't get any kind of title or any kind of diploma or what, I don't know, whatever you get with that kind of thing. But
from what I remember, most people considered him to be a priest-like figure, but it was but it was almost kind of like a dark version of it. Yeah. Like a rock star version of being a priest.
Like I said, he still was a controversial figure. There were some religious figures that thought that that he was demonic or had demonic powers. Because one of the things, he billed himself as a healer, a mystic, and he could, had prophecies about the future, like Nostradamus.
If you had priests saying that he had demonic powers, that may have added to his mystique.
Yeah.
Because people believed in that shit back then.
It must have. I mean, he had to have something to just come out of this, nowhere peasant village and get into the highest echelons of Russian aristocracy.
Well, it could have only been...
in only a few years.
It could have only been one thing that did it, and that was just charisma. Yeah. He could pull it off.
And he knew people.
Yeah.
Because that was how he got, an introduction to the family and all that other kind of stuff. It was through people that he knew at various places through his travels.
He had to have known how to look, how to behave, and what to say at the right time to the right person. And he was probably had a very good way of sizing someone up. Which that checks out with the kind of like the cult leader. You know what I mean? The mentality of a cult leader, it's one of the things that they can do is size somebody up and seek out a weakness. Same with a con man.
Yeah, and it definitely does seem like he was very adept at doing that.
Right. Just looking at somebody and figure out what it is that, what is their ruin? As that's what Scientology would say. You know what I mean? What is it that's bothering this person? And I'll approach them from that, from that angle.
Yeah.
You know, that's all he was doing. Very observant, probably.
Yeah. Putting his crazy eyes on you.
Yeah, observant and yeah. You know, he would have been a really perceptive and observant guy, somebody who was paying attention to details and could read body language, you know.
Yeah.
And understand things like voice stress inflection to be able to read somebody.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you'd call that skill something that a mentalist would do.
Yeah. Like a cold reading.
Yeah, like a cold reading. Right.
That's what your best mentalists and magicians are
Right.
really, really good at that.
So he's probably doing that.
Yeah.
And maybe he learned how to do that through kind of like a life of crime in his earlier years.
Yeah.
Maybe like pickpocket, something real petty.
Like I said, he's been accused of like horse thievery and you know, things of that nature, getting in fights, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he wasn't a pussy. Evidently, Rasputin was a badass, and he could intimidate the shit out of you. When he needed to.
like I said, look how long it took to kill him. I mean, even the shit that's not exaggerated, it's still pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, by the way, by the time you're hearing this recording, Unseen Hand should be in its second audio edition, so all her new books should be sounding perfect.
I mean, I finished editing it and I uploaded it. You know, we're recording this probably like a week before it goes up. So it might be a little longer than that, but it should be a few days after this comes out, because I just uploaded the new files today. So improved audio on the Unseen Hand is
if you go on Amazon, Amazon will probably tell you somewhere that it's a second edition. Yeah. Because they've done that, right?
Well, they put it in the description.
In the description
that
okay.
like, you know, as of, you know, March 2019, you know, audio quality, improved audio quality, whatever, blah blah blah.
So that's great. So now that that's done, and boy, that was a smooth transition from the show into a damn plug, wasn't it? You didn't see that coming, did you? It's because
I know, you just blindsided me with that shit.
Because I've been drinking.
Yeah.
But
you haven't even been. That's your first one, right?
This bitch here is like a double compared to what I normally would drink, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's strong.
Yeah. I ran out of orange juice, so I got cranberry.
Right, and of course I'm drinking what they call Kool Con, and I have a lot of people on my Facebook group called Tom's Shitty Movies with SHIDDY.
2 D's.
Yeah, you can find me there on Facebook, where I talk about shitty movies, which are good movies, but they're bad movies. Anyway, a lot of people from England and all around the world are asking me what the recipe to this is. Equal parts silver tequila, guava nectar, and pineapple. That's Lord Kool Khan.
I've heard that people in the UK are having a hard time getting guava nectar, though.
I'm having a hard time getting guava nectar since I told you all
last
about it.
time we went to Publix, it was all gone.
Yeah, because you guys are buying it up.
Who you bitches like who live in Sanford that are like that are buying all our guava nectar? Yeah. We went like all the other juices were there, and the guava nectar one was like empty all the way back.
Hardcore Central American tropical drink. Got all these local Mexicans buying up all my guava.
Peach, still had mango. All the guava was gone.
But just the guava.
And they didn't have the Goya. I don't know why. See, we have where we live. It's if you don't live in the South, we have Publix, which is like the best grocery store. I mean,
that's the high class grocery store.
That's the nice grocery store. It's nice if you can't afford like Whole Foods.
Although Winn-Dixie's trying to compete with it, they're renovating all.
Well, they have to.
Yeah, they're renovating everything.
When I was growing up, Winn-Dixie was like the white trash. Well, no, maybe that might have been Goodings. But maybe that was just where I lived, because I lived like
Piggly Wiggly was the fucking white trash. That's
I didn't like grow up in the hood. I grew up like at the edge of the hood.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Publix is kind of the nicer store, and we have
Winn-Dixie's the Challenger, and they got a good deli.
They do. They have good meat actually. Yeah. But Publix, we have like one on one side of us and one like on the other side. Like you go out like the street that we live on, and then you go left and we have a Publix, and we go right in a little while and you have a Publix. So it's like sometimes we try to go back and forth, and sometimes they don't have the same shit, even though the Publix are only like 2 miles apart. Yeah. Maybe more than 2 miles. Maybe it's like 3 or 4 miles.
Some of the best sub sandwiches, the best sandwiches you can get. Right
for real, their deli is like their
like $5
sub sandwiches
are $5 you get a fresh sub
amazing.
Like that long.
Man, fuck Subway.
Yeah.
Fuck Subway.
Subways.
If you live, I mean, if you live in the South,
Publix, go down there to the deli.
If you live in the South, you know Publix subs are the best subs.
And the fried chicken.
That too.
And, yeah, the fried chicken.
Yeah, Publix subs better than Subway, obviously.
Better than Kentucky
better than
Fried
Jimmy
Chicken.
John's.
Yeah.
Better than all that shit. Yeah.
Yep.
Best subs. All right. So where was I? I was talking about Rasputin, wasn't I?
We're giving a plug to a damn grocery store. That's fucking funny. This is the funny show. I'll tell you what.
That's where
We plug what we want to plug. They don't even pay us.
Well, like I said, it's not even a plug because we're just talking about shit we like.
Yeah,
It's like, you know what I mean? They want to pay me, they can, but they don't have to.
You start charging these bitches. You start charging Shudder
But see,
too. Every time we talk about
see,
movies
that's
we saw
how
on
you
Shudder.
know. That's how you know that our opinions or that our
they're
love
legit
of them
in it,
are
yeah.
legit because we don't get any money from
We
them.
don't get any money.
We just like it. And the
We're
same
not
with Shudder.
making money. We only
They
make
don't-
money off Patreon.
They don't have to pay. Shudder doesn't have to pay us. I just really like Shudder. I'm just like
Yeah.
fucking $5 a month and I can see all the horror movies I want.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And they have such a good shit.
I
And
would rather have Shudder than Netflix, but Netflix has a couple series that we have to keep, so we have to keep Netflix because of a couple series.
Yeah.
MST 3000's on.
And honestly, like I said on the last show, Netflix has actually been trying to up their game. They added some older shit.
Yeah.
In fact, last night we just watched Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street, the one with Johnny Depp in it.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten. I saw that in the theater back in
movie.
2007, and I was like, I'd forgotten how
It's good musical.
entertaining that was.
Yeah, prison vengeance story.
So bloody.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten how gory it was too, and I was like, yay! So anyway, all right. So along comes the year 1904. Now, Rasputin has made his way to St. Petersburg, the seat of the Romanov family. Now, the Romanovs have ruled Russia for over 300 years.
Damn.
Yeah, this
It's a
is
long
the imperial
family
family. Not kings or anything like that. These are emperors and
Yeah.
duchesses and whatnot. So yeah, they've ruled for a very long time. However, they are, although they didn't know it at the time, they were the last of the Romanovs, the last of the imperial families to rule Russia. Because this was the end of everything. Although, like I said, they didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, well, World War One and everything.
Well, yeah, that too.
The modern era started to come.
Yeah. So by the time Rasputin got there in 1904, things weren't great in Russia at the time. And Tsar Nicholas, let's talk a little bit about Tsar Nicholas and the Tsarina Alexandra. The thing about Tsar Nicholas, as I said, his family had ruled Russia for, many generations. But Nicholas, even as a child, was not super jazzed about wanting to be Tsar. He evidently saw his grandfather assassinated by a bomb. He was blown to pieces when he was a little kid. And he's just like, yeah, that's just not something I want to do. So he was kind of like a reluctant Tsar. And by all accounts, he was very weak-willed, very indecisive. It was, like I said, it was just not a job he wanted, and he was clearly not very, interested in doing it. So I think society suffered because of it. I mean, he would leave just big decisions till the last minute, and then he would just kind of go along with whatever the last person that advised him and said, hey, you should do this. He's like, yeah, good idea. Let's just do that. For a while, it is said that the joke in Russia was that the two most powerful people in Russia were Tsar Nicholas and the last person that talked to him.
Yeah, the Romanov, the imperial family, I mean, their history, I mean, for the past 100 years before this was pretty bad. Even you could probably go back to about 150 years before this. There's a lot of mental problems, lots of hemophilia.
Well, yeah, and that really
bad
played
leadership.
into... Yeah.
It started to look like what you saw in the equestrian families of ancient Rome. Lots of madness.
Well, inbreeding will do.
Yeah, it was inbreeding, I think, was a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And just ruthlessness.
That too.
There's still a lot of mysteries about, from that era. I mean, there was Ivan the Terrible, who was pretty terrible, but he wasn't dumb. And we're still looking for his damn library. Yeah. Maybe we ought to do a show on that one day.
Oh, yeah, we meant to do that, actually.
Yeah,
I think we mentioned that on some other show a long time ago.
Moscow, or it's either Moscow or St. Peter. No, I think it was Moscow. It was totally undermined with tunnels. Stone tunnels
we mentioned
everywhere.
that in our Going Underground show.
Yeah.
Now I remember.
Most of them are too dangerous to go into, but somewhere in those tunnels is Ivan the Terrible's lost library. and in it are a bunch of fucking missing books, stuff that came, stuff that the originals were destroyed during the burning of the Library of Alexandria, like different versions of, was it Shakespeare? No. Different versions of the Bible were in there that had different books that are gone. There's all kinds
Shakespeare,
of...
that's several hundred.
Yeah, I forgot where it was. I forgot what it was. There was... Oh, no, I remember what it was. There's an older version of a Roman history book that they want to find, and evidently it was on the list of one of the missing books. You know what I mean? And in that book, it was before the Christian Church, the Catholic Church, had changed history. So in there may have been what real Roman history was during the time of Jesus.
Yeah.
They want that one. What am I thinking of? What was the name of that book? Suetonius?
Suetonius?
No,
Sure.
yeah.
Might have been.
I forgot which one it was.
Tacitus?
No. Yeah, I remember Suetonius. No, the one written by the Jewish author.
Oh, I can't remember.
The Antiquity of the Jews.
Oh, okay.
And I forget, it was a Roman writer. It was a Jewish history book, and in that was written during the time in which Jesus supposedly would have lived, and they want that edition. It's a first edition, before it had been altered, because it had been altered by the Catholic Church, and some stuff had been inserted in there.
Yeah. Catholic Church, they're kind of responsible for a lot of information being lost. Or altered.
Yeah, because there's some passages that had been inserted into that book to lend historical credence to the existence of a historical Jesus.
Yeah.
Which probably wasn't a historical Jesus. He seems to be a mythical character.
Yeah. And like I said, we went into that a lot when Robert Price was on the show.
Yeah, Dr. Price will tell you all about that, but. Yeah, sorry to break it to you people. That guy may have not existed. Yeah.
All right, so like I said, now Tsar Nicholas, as much as he did not like to be Tsar, now to his credit, he and his wife, unusually for this type of marriage, royal marriages, were usually undertaken for, reasons of political expediency. But that does not seem to be the case. They actually they met at a wedding, when one of them, what?
I remembered it. Josephus.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was. One of those books from Josephus. Anyway, I didn't mean to. This is 13 o'clock. This is how 13 o'clock rolls.
All right. So they met at a wedding when they both were teenagers. I believe Nicholas was 15 or 16, and I think Alexandra was 12. Now, then much later on, they married, and by all accounts, they were completely and totally in love with one another. So it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't one of those marriages of convenience or whatever like that. They actually were, from examining their letters and stuff like that, they actually were like a unified pair and all this other kind of stuff. Now, interestingly, Alexandra, who became the Tsarina, she was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria. She'd actually been born in Germany. The Tsarina, not Queen Victoria. And, as you mentioned before, she carried the gene for hemophilia.
Yeah.
Sometimes called the royal disease because it goes in royal families. Although, interestingly, on a personal note, my family also carries it. My grandfather had it. Several of my aunts and several of my cousins are also have it. Not that I know of. I've never been tested, even though my mom keeps bugging me to do that. But
I've seen you get a cut and it heals up.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I have it, but some of my other aunts and cousins have it to varying degrees, and actually some of my cousin has a son that has full blown, because usually women carry it and men get it, not always, right. Because I have a couple of aunts that. Interestingly, I'm not going to mention their names or anything like that, but I have a couple of aunts, they're twins, and they have it and they manifest it. And that is so unusual that they were subject to study when they were
big problem with hemophilia is dim internal bleeding. It's okay if you get a cut on the outside, you can bind that up. If you ever have any internal bleeding, that's it. You just
That's
bleed
what I
out
mean.
until
You're
you're
fucked.
done. You're fucked.
So you really, really, really have to watch it.
Can't get hurt.
You really have to watch it.
Yeah.
So the problem being, okay, so Tsar Nicholas and Tsarina Alexandra, they started having children, and of course, just like every other royal family, pretty much, they needed a male heir. However, the first 4 kids that they had were all girls. Tatiana, Olga, Maria, and later Anastasia. Finally, they had a boy, Alexei. However, he had hemophilia. Really, really bad. So they tried to keep this a secret because they were already on some pretty shaky political ground. You know, there had been like labor strikes. There'd been all kind of like revolutionary rumblings, like in Russia at the time. You know, people were like, we don't need the monarchy or whatever they called it, the imperial families. And we're starting to kind of push back against it. Conditions were not very good. And, you know, they didn't like the Romanov family that were in because they felt like they just kept making poor decisions. They kept losing all these wars. They had been at a war with Japan that they lost and all these other kind of things. So they were not super popular. So they didn't want anyone to know that Alexei had hemophilia because they thought, you know, if they thought that he was going to die and the line wasn't going to continue, then that might like foment revolution or make, you know, like push revolution forward kind of thing, because people would be like, oh, well, that's the end of that line. Let's get rid of these people. So they tried to keep it a secret that Alexei had hemophilia. Now, while this whole shit was going on, Rasputin turns up in the court. And he is able to, like I said, as far as I know, he didn't just like turn up one day and be like, hey, I'm Rasputin, I'm going to solve all your problems. He did know like other religious figures and other monks and things like that, you know, knew other people in court. So he like got an introduction and all this other stuff. So he shows up in court, he gives them a gift and things like that. Now, he was able to ingratiate himself with the royal family by some accounts, knowing that Alexei had hemophilia and being able to cure it.
Yeah, this always mystified me.
Now, this is
How the hell could he do that?
This is interesting. Yeah. And they're still kind of talking about maybe how this could have happened. Now, some sources say maybe he just had some kind of weird like hypnosis thing, like maybe he could hypnotize the kid and it was like a psychosomatic type of whatever. That's what
I always thought it was.
Or another thing too that has been speculated is that, okay, back in those days, I mean, there's still not really a cure for hemophilia, not that I know of, because like I said, it runs in my family. A lot of my family members have it. No. But back then, you know, they were even more clueless about it. So the only cure for it was to give people aspirin, which, if you know anything about aspirin, would make it worse because aspirin is a blood thinner.
Yeah, and it's also kind of an anti-inflammatory, which means that things wouldn't swell up and close up. They would just not swell up and you'd bleed out. That makes sense.
So some sources have speculated that maybe all Rasputin did was say to the doctor, hey, why don't you quit giving that kid aspirin and maybe that might be better.
No.
But I don't know how he would have known that.
How would he have known?
But, it might not even have been that. It might have just been the case of him, you know, getting the doctors away from him. You know what I mean?
Could he have found a way to cause blood to clot? You can take powdered aluminum, and it'll cause blood to clot.
It's possible. Like I said, I don't think anyone knows.
They didn't have aluminum back then.
I don't think anyone knows.
Maybe there was something he knew of. Maybe some kind of a Russian folk cure.
Yeah.
That if you rubbed something on a wound or touched a wound with some kind of a powder, blood would mix with it and cause it to coagulate.
Yeah.
Or to, you know what I mean, to make like some kind of a glue, you know, seal a wound. And that's how, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever seen powdered aluminum. They used to give it out in old-timey shaving kits. If you ever nicked yourself, you could touch a little bit of aluminum to the nick and it would just vanish.
Yeah.
Maybe he found something like that.
It's possible. Like I said, maybe he had some kind of folk remedy. Maybe. Yeah. Or like I said, maybe just his influence, you know, maybe the family thought his influence was more beneficial, so they told the doctors to back off, and the doctors stopped giving him aspirin, and then it...
By all accounts, somehow Rasputin could stop a kid from bleeding.
Yeah. No one knows how. But
and the Tsarina believed it.
They all believed it.
Believed it, wholeheartedly.
They thought he had magic powers.
He was the only one that could stop that kid from bleeding.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that he could somehow.
Yeah, maybe he had some way of doing that. I don't think it was magic or nothing like that.
No, it's some kind of either hypnosis or some kind of Russian folk remedy he found in his travels.
Yeah.
Some kind of a coagulant.
Maybe.
That you could maybe like hide a little bit of it in a jar. While they weren't looking, you could put some on your fingertip.
Yeah.
And then say some prayers and then touch your
do some
finger over
shit.
the top of it. And it would somehow cause that wound to seal itself.
Yeah.
And then you could say that it was some kind of a magical power that you had or mystical power. That's what I think it was. Something like that.
Yeah.
Something that acted very similar to powdered aluminum.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that it might have just been coincidental as well.
Yeah.
That, maybe the disease wasn't as bad when Rasputin was there. Maybe Rasputin was just able to calm the kid down. Because by all accounts, like I said, he was a very charismatic person. He was able to kind of chill everyone out. Everyone felt relaxed and comfortable around him. Well, not everyone, but, the immediate Romanov family did. So no one really knows.
By all accounts that I've found, it was believed by the royal family.
They did believe
that
it.
if he showed up, he could stop that kid from bleeding.
Yeah, he could fix it.
He knew something.
Yeah.
All right. It was either some kind of hypnosis, which I'm kind of leaning away from that. I think somehow he had discovered in his travels a coagulant.
Yeah.
Of some sort. Something you could rub on a cut.
Yeah.
And get it to coagulate. To blood to coagulate.
Maybe.
Or something to seal it. Like a glue of some sort. That's what I think it was.
Now,
I got no proof. It's just a theory because of, old-timey shaving kits.
Yeah.
That you could do that back in the 40s, 50s, with some aluminum.
Well, nowadays you can put like a roll-on deodorant, like one of the deodorant, but that's what I usually do.
He must have
cut myself to put deodorant on it.
I think somehow he found a folk remedy that could stop bleeding. That's what I'm going to say.
But, that's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Because there's all kind of stuff in nature that
would do
something like that.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that was widely known. It was something that you learned on a farm dealing with animals.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't think that there's anything particularly mysterious about, because like I said, they try to keep the fact that Alexei had hemophilia, they try to keep that on the down low, but the thing about Rasputin is that he knew a lot of other like court adjacent people that might have told him that. So it's not like some big mystery, like how he showed up at court and said, "Oh, I know your kid has hemophilia," even though nobody's supposed to know that, because a lot of other people in the court knew it, and he knew a lot of other people in the court, like before he even went there. Yeah. So I think he could have got that info from like other sources. So I don't think there's anything
and
like
he might have known
some
crazy ass Siberian folk remedy that you'd learn on a damn farm, where if you grab the little blue stuff out of a fucking chicken shit and rub that on a cut, it stops the bleeding. It might have been,
Don't really do that because
don't do that. I just pulled that out of my ass.
I don't know.
But it might have been something that obscure, something that you would only know if you came up in a Siberian farm, in a certain county, some kind of folk remedy that actually worked, and it was some commonly found, substance. If you put that in a cut, it stops the bleeding immediately. Yeah. Through a chemical process. Yeah. I bet you it was something like that. Yeah. And that if I could go back in time, if I could go back in time and find out what it was and tell you what he was doing, it would probably be fucking hilarious. You know what I'm talking about? Would have probably been some hilarious little thing that his grandma showed him when he was a little kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was probably something like that.
Now I'm kind of wondering if like he knew that specifically when he went there, because he must have known Alexei was their only male heir, so he would have been the next Tsar had he lived, and had the whole assassination and whatnot not happened. But So he must have known that that was a weakness.
Yeah.
Because that kid was so sickly and no one in the public knew what was the matter with him.
Right.
But...
So he's heard that the kid had hemophilia that would bleed. He was, I know how to fix that. And it might have been something so stupid.
And that might have been, because that was definitely one of the major things that ingratiated him.
And it probably wasn't anything supernatural or high-tech.
Well, I know it wasn't supernatural.
Something as stupid as, well, you take a little bit of chicken egg yolk and put it on a wound, and the enzymes, you know what I mean, cause coagulation.
Yeah.
It was probably something that
Which,
stupid.
like, I don't know if that works.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I'm pulling it out of my ass.
But
it would have been something. It would have been something that a farmer would have discovered by accident back up in Siberia. That's probably what it was.
But putting deodorant on your cousin,
that works.
That works though.
Well, are there other waxy substances that will do that?
Well, because deodorant, like most deodorants, have aluminum.
Oh, it has aluminum.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
stop.
That's why they tell you not to wear them, because they'll like
maybe
give you
there's another
armpit
substance
cancer.
you can find in nature around a, you know what I mean, around a farm that is similar to an aluminum.
Yeah.
It was going to be something dumb like that.
Yeah.
But he knew about it and he used it to his advantage, like
Chemistry.
a cunning man would, like a con man would.
Yeah.
Which is what he was. He was a con man.
I do kind of feel like that.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you know, him being able to, or at least their belief that he could stop Alexei's bleeding, was a major factor in him, like, pretty much, you know, I'm not going to say he, like, took over their life or nothing like that, but he became a very trusted advisor to the whole family. Now, here's where it starts to get creepy because, I mean, if it wasn't creepy before, because evidently, the family saw no problem in allowing Rasputin to hang out with the 4 daughters in their bedroom when they were in their little nightgowns.
Yeah, this part always mystified me.
And whatnot.
Always mystified me.
Like I said, sources differ on this. Now, if Rasputin was, because he certainly was a horn dog. I don't think he made any secret of that.
This dude had a rock star level libido.
He was always like
trying to get in the damn
banging prostitutes.
Talk his way up your skirt in a heartbeat. The motherfucker was a ladies' man and he didn't even touch water.
Well, a couple
didn't
people...
even touch water. This guy was dirty.
He was.
Dirty.
By all accounts, he was a filthy,
dirty, stinky bum.
Individual.
Yeah, he's a damn bum.
Why? I don't know.
Punk rock as fuck. This guy.
Crust punk, even.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's what they call that.
Crust punk.
He's a crust punk.
Fucking nasty.
Yeah, it's like he never fucking... Like, he would go to the bathhouse with the prostitutes, but he wouldn't take a bath there.
No.
He would just go in the room and beat them with a belt and then leave.
Weird motherfucker.
Without taking a...
Yeah.
I'm just saying. By some accounts.
Yeah.
Like I said, no one's sure how much of this is true or not. But like I said...
He was kind of a fetishy figure. Kind of...
Yeah, he was... I always want to say, like, Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
Like, but, yeah, so he was, like, super dirty, super gross. He had the crazy eyes. And yet, they let this dude hang out. And by some accounts, too, like, they said he had, like, no shame. He would just sit there and, like, pick his nose and, like, eat it in front of people.
Yeah.
And shit like that. It's, like, just... I don't know if he thought that shit was funny, because he's like, how much can I get away with? And they won't even, like, kick me out of here.
He was just...
Because I'm a mystic, yo. I'm going to pick my mystical
rock.
Nose and eat my mystical boogers.
Yeah, he was punk rock before punk rock had existed. But I tell you, there must have been something about him.
This is fucked up.
Must have been something about him, you know what I mean? I guess he
For
had
him to have got that far.
He had some kind of sexual magnetism to him, and he had, you know, fucking... There was just something about him.
Even though he looks like a fucking freak. And like I said...
He had a big old fucking beak of a nose on him and a big old fucking nasty beard and shit.
Yeah, people said he smelled like a goat.
There was just something about him, the way he carried himself. He had some charisma.
I guess.
Of some sort.
Like I said, he must have.
It must have been, I mean, he must have had this counterculture charisma that was very the opposite of what you would find in the Victorian era. And then really Russia was still kind of in a Victorian era.
I think that's kind of the appeal of a lot of these types of characters.
So they were the opposite.
They're so transgressive.
They were transgressive and shit. But
like they were doing all this, they're just like doing all this crazy shit.
Yeah.
They smell really bad.
Yeah.
They don't even care, man.
No. That didn't necessarily mean the shit was good. It just meant that it was
Yeah.
It was just transgressive. It was
Well,
really
I'm just saying that's probably what the fascination
They were
was.
thinking it was fucking awesome because it was a breath of fresh air from their point of view.
Yeah. Because,
that's...
I mean, growing up in... I'm not going to say it sucked because compared to, like, the peasants of the time, I'm sure it was probably a fucking breeze. But, you know, you lived your life, you know, very sequestered. You had a very stringent, like, series of rules you had to adhere to. So some dude comes blowing in his beard and crazy eyes and smelling like ass and picking his nose and wiping it on everything. And people are like, hey, that dude's kind of neat.
Yeah, but the military aristocracy of Russia, guys who knew both sides of the fence, they were from rich families, but they'd also had military experience and lived, you know, in the trenches with the troops. They saw him for what he was. They're like, this is just a dirty fucking peasant. Yeah. You know what I mean? But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I mean, I think
this dude here, man, he's a piece of shit. That's the way they they eventually tried to kill him. They did kill him, I guess.
Well, the nobles.
That's what I was talking about.
To kill him.
Yeah, and I think, but the thing is, the guy that actually did, these were military-based nobles.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, they were military aristocracy.
So here's the thing. Like I said, we're not sure. Many people who were in the household at the time said that Rasputin had pretty much full access to the daughter's, you know, nursery, what it would have been at the time, where all the kids slept. That he went in there when they were getting ready for bed, like in their night clothes and stuff. Now, the girls have never said that he did anything unpleasant to them. He just said they called him their friend. They said he would just come in and he would like read us bedtime stories and he was really nice and he would hug us and stuff. And some people have said, you know, he had kids of his own. Maybe it was just a fatherly thing. Probably true. Yeah. But which maybe it was, but
that didn't mean your wife was safe, though.
I don't know. No, for sure.
Yeah, because this motherfucker would get into your wife quicker than shit. I don't think he was a pedophile, but he was about women. And,
well, yeah, he was knocking down all the and he wasn't asking permission either because one of the women that worked in the household later came out and accused him of rape, and the Tsarina was so all about him that she fired that chick.
Yeah, defended him.
She didn't believe him. She said he would never do that. He's a holy man.
Oh, he's holy, all right. He's looking for every hole he can find.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And then so I think he was accused of rape 2 times. I think it was like 2, like you know, it was a maid and like maybe a nanny or something like that.
Well, he knew it was safe. He could just take that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He was like taking advantage.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was well known that he would like hire prostitutes like a lot.
Yeah.
And he was known to kind of like beat them up and shit like that also. Or, you know, so sources
Well, he's trying to get the sin out of them.
That's what he would tell them.
Of course.
He was trying to like purify. He was trying to like, beat the devil out of him. He's like, let me just beat you up and then I'll have sex with you and then I'll just leave you and not take a bath.
Oh, people
are
fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
That's fucking BDSM. He was a fetish motherfucker.
Yeah, like I said, he's like a Marquis de Sade kind of type of individual. Now, it should be said that even though, you know, the Tsarina was super into it, the kids were they loved him, I guess. They never said anything against him.
I'm going to say that he was good with children.
He might have been.
Yeah.
I mean, they were fairly young at this point.
Just because the dude takes advantage and it doesn't necessarily mean he's not good with kids. I think he was good with kids.
I mean, just because he's a man
you know why I'm going to say that?
And a rapist.
You know, but the reason why he got to the place he got to in life is because of kids. So he had to have that power of being a protector of children.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean? He can keep a kid from bleeding. He can keep all the kids happy. And the Tsarina loves you for that. So once you have that, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Oh yeah, and
like you never want to like.
He took full advantage.
Of course.
Yeah.
The kids were his meal ticket, basically.
In a way, it might. Now that you mention it, he might not have done anything bad to the kids because that, like you said, that was his meal ticket. If he did something bad to the kids,
he'd have lost everything.
Then because if you're a mom, nobody fucks with your kids.
The kids were the source of his power.
Yeah.
So. Of course, the kids have to love him, so I imagine he fucking entertained the shit out of those kids.
That's what they said.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, they never said he did nothing bad to them, and it's like...
The second those kids...
Yeah, that might have been because they were naive and shit, but I don't know.
The second those kids turn on him, he's out of the palace.
Yeah.
So that's what he has to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it should be said that, even though the Tsarina was all into him, the kids were all into him, they called him their friend and stuff like that. Now, other family members, not so jazzed about his presence. They thought it was weird that, he was allowed to hang out with the girls.
It was weird.
When they were teenagers, he thought that he's like, oh, he's in there, caressing them, and it's it's strange and it's inappropriate. So a lot of them didn't like it.
Well, you know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's in it, baby. You so beautiful.
Yeah.
He's doing that, but he's not knocking that down because that would, of course, Tsar Nicholas and the wife, the Tsarina would come after him.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course he's loving on him. All right, but he's not transgressing. Because if you do that, then you lose access to...
Yeah, because then everybody will get the fuck out.
Yeah, right. Because,
Or they'd have you killed.
You need her... Or you need these kids to approve of you, because if they don't, then you can't rape the servants and screw the Tsarina and all that.
Which I think he really was.
Yeah,
now,
of course
whether he was okay, I'm not.
I think he was screwing them.
I'm not really sure if he was I for sure believe that he was raping the servants and the nurses.
And he was
stuff
making money too.
I don't know if he was having an affair with the Tsarina or not. Rumors about that have circulated, but. Just everything that I have read about her personality, about her relationship with the Tsar and stuff like that, I'm not sure that she would have gone to that extent of having sex with him. But it could be. But I'm not saying that he's doing that with everyone else, though.
Remember that movie that we saw, The Favorite?
Yeah.
Good movie, by the way. I have a feeling. Yeah, great movie. I have a feeling that a lot of the royal families, were kind of what you'd call swingers.
True.
Okay. It wouldn't surprise me. Okay. I'm not saying that this happened. Okay. I'm starting banging on all cylinders now. It would not surprise me if one of the reasons why Rasputin was able to get away with the shit he got away with could have been that Tsar Nicholas might have been a little bit bisexual. I'm just going to say that.
Well, sure,
because,
that's possible.
You know what I'm talking about? So maybe there was some shit going on there that we don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's we can speculate all day long,
right.
But it's we weren't there. No one was there behind closed doors. There might have been all kind of freaky
Remember
shit
that
going
program
on.
we saw with the guy was taking advantage of the Mormons?
Oh, yeah.
Not only was not only did he abduct the daughter and screw the wife, he was fucking around with the husband.
Oh my God, what the fuck was
that
the
was
name
some
of that
weird
documentary?
Shit too.
Oh, that was I can't remember the name of it. It's on Netflix.
Could it be that Rasputin actually put the moves on Tsar
on
Nicholas?
Both of them.
And actually had control over Tsar Nicholas.
Although I feel like he had less control over Nicholas than he did over Alexandra. Nicholas would... See, here's the thing. I think in later years, and particularly in a lot of propaganda that was written later on about Rasputin, that it's he's the one that caused the downfall of the Romanovs. He was telling them what to do. I don't think he had as much influence as he's generally given credit for, because honestly, the Russian aristocracy was crumbling even before he turned up.
Yeah.
So
he was just taking advantage of a fucking aristocracy.
Did he
that was
have
already
a
going.
part in it? Sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a really big part, though.
He was more like a parasite on
because Nicholas, particularly after a few years, he was kind of yeah, I'm just gonna go over here and you guys do whatever. I feel like he kept Rasputin around because it made his wife happy.
Yeah.
Because she liked him and she believed in him. I don't think Nicholas was as suckered by him as she was, or as enamored of him. And yes, he would listen to Rasputin's suggestions, but sometimes he didn't.
Yeah, but Rasputin didn't end the Romanovs. The Romanovs were on their way out.
That's what I mean.
Generations ago.
I think that's giving him entirely too much credit.
What really
I think he was just part of the whole.
He was just part of the scene during that time.
What was going on?
What really got rid of the Romanovs was World War One.
Yeah.
They never recovered from the loss of World War One. Really,
Yeah. But I definitely do think, like I said, I don't think because I have seen I was watching some documentaries about him that were trying to paint him in the worst light possible, and then some that were just oh, he wasn't so bad or anything like that. I think he was kind of a shithead. He was an opportunist. But I don't think he was, the person that caused the whole downfall of the line or anything like that. I think
World
that
War
would have
One-
happened anyway.
World War One
without him. It just hastened it, maybe.
Yeah, it was,
maybe.
It was World War One, and the coup de grace was the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah.
The Bolsheviks got them. Rise of communism, creation of the Soviet Union. That's what did it. Just the new era came.
Yeah, and like I said,
and it wasn't better, really. Well, kinda.
It's almost like it was a lateral move. It's like because it was kind of shitty, like
Soviet
when the
era,
imperial,
the Soviet
and
era,
then the Soviet Union. It wasn't really
the Soviet
better.
era was fucking bloody, and at its best, it was boring.
Yeah.
If you talk to ex-Soviet citizens, I'm a Cold War era guy. Soviet Union was fucking boring. Really, it was a boring fucking place. Hard to get jeans. It was hard to get jeans.
I know,
you couldn't get good music.
I remember
They
them
didn't
saying
have a
that.
fucking scene, all right? The Soviet Union was fucking boring.
Yeah. Like I said, it's almost kind of like going from the imperial period to like the Soviet period. It was like a lateral move. It was they wanted it to be better. It just wasn't better.
Yeah, it was fucking boring.
It was just as bad,
Not cool.
But yeah, so like I said, do I think Rasputin caused the downfall? No. I think that would have happened anyway. Like I said, the shit was crumbling even before he got there. Like, the country was kind of in upheaval and shit like that. So I don't think he had that much influence over their decisions. And Tsar Nicholas was not known for making really sharp decisions prior to him arriving. The
problem with monarchy is that you have, most of the time, average guys inheriting too much power.
Or crazy people that have inherited madness diseases.
Yeah. And Nicholas would have been a guy who would have been under normal circumstances, would have been just a very mundane dude.
Well, and like I said,
working at the gas
station. He was at least self-aware enough to know that he didn't want to do that.
Right.
He just kind of got into it because he was the guy. It's like he was the next one in line and he had to do it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do it. He said that.
Yeah.
And he wasn't good at it. Nobody thought he was good at it.
Right.
All right.
Poor Nicholas, you know what I mean? When you think about it,
I feel kind of bad for him,
It's a
actually.
gigantic country that was poor with a very backwards, almost medieval people. And you're trying to make this big fucking clusterfuck into something that worked. And it's that era of Russia, it just wasn't a modern country. It wasn't in the modern era yet. And it didn't come into the modern era really until the 90s. And some may say that it's still not modern. But my heart goes out to the Russians. The Russians were a hard-working people. They've been through hell. Look at their fucking history.
Yeah.
They're the Harkonnens of the real
Earth.
world. Basically, yeah.
The thing is, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I say I feel bad for Tsar Nicholas. In a way I do, but in a way I don't, because by all accounts, even though he seemed, yes, he loved his wife, yes, he loved his children, but he was also a very autocratic ruler. He believed that, I have the divine right to do this, that, and the other. He had, like, a really horrible, like, secret police that fucking murdered people, and shit like that. So it's kind of a thing where I feel bad because they all got gunned down and that sucks, but for the kids mostly. But I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing because
there was nothing wrong.
Like
with
I said, there's nobody, no heroes in this. There's no heroes in this.
If you ask me, there's really nothing wrong with the Romanovs. The Romanovs are just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they think about it. How could you lead a nation like that? You know what I mean? There wasn't much of a nation as we know it. I mean, it was still medieval, really.
Yeah.
Really, they were in charge of a city or two. That's kind of...
I don't even know how you would begin to rule...
something like
a landmass...
that size.
That large with that
no
many
technology,
people. And you're just in one palace.
Yeah. With no technology, no telecommunications.
It's like you maybe could do it now.
But not then.
But back then, what the fuck? It's like, geez, you'd make a law and it would take like fucking 3 months for it to get anywhere.
When you think about the rise of the Bolsheviks and the killing of the fucking royal family was more symbolic than it was actual.
It was.
Because the Bolsheviks could have just risen to power and sidestepped
Yeah.
Well,
that's what they were gonna do at first. They weren't going to kill them at first.
Because the Romanovs really weren't important at that point anyway.
Yeah, they weren't going to kill them.
They didn't have a reach. You know?
True. But like I said, that's something that evolved over the course, because they totally weren't going to. At first, they were just going to like exile them or like keep them in prison or whatever, and then it just kind of exiled into like the horrible bloodbath that ensued. But we're probably at the halfway point right now. So let's take a break. So let's take a break right now. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about Rasputin and what happened to him, and also what happened to the Romanov family. It wasn't good. Spoiler alert. So. The Faceless Villain, a collection of the eeriest unsolved murders of the 20th century, Volume 2, includes cases spanning the years from 1960 through 1979, featuring such infamous crimes as the triple homicide at Lake Bodom, the family massacre known as the Good Heart Murders, the serial killings of the Zodiac, Bible John, Jack the Stripper, and the Freeway Phantom, the slaughter of dozens of women and girls along the Highway of Tears and the Texas killing fields, and the mysterious death of suspected spy, the Isdal woman, along with dozens of other fascinating and horrifying accounts. Buy it now from Amazon in print, Kindle, or audiobook format.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You're so weird. Why are you so weird? Why are you so weird? Oh my goodness. Look at how funny you are. Look at how funny you are. Did you fall asleep like that? Did you fall asleep like that? You did. Are you sleeping? No? Okay. Sorry, I interrupted. Those are her chew sticks, y'all. Because she chews on anything metal. Like, she chews on microphones, she chews on computer cords or power cords. So I bought her these little sticks that have catnip on them. From Chewy. They do work, but she still chews on shit she's not supposed to. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to interrupt your nap.
Rasputin is apparently talking to his friend, who is a monk named Iliador. That wasn't actually his real name. That was like his monk name or whatever. Yeah. I guess that's like your hip hop name.
It's like your porn name.
I guess.
Yeah. Iliador.
Now, yeah. So allegedly, he says to his friend the monk that he has kissed the Tsarina.
Right.
He didn't say he had sex with her. He said he kissed her. So the monk is like, nah, bro, you're making that shit up. So then Rasputin like produces all these letters that's like, look at these love letters that we've written. Now, are these real love letters? Are they forged? Who fucking knows?
He couldn't read, evidently.
Right, but I don't know. I don't know where they came from. I don't know if somebody else, wrote them or what. So he shows them to the monk, and the monk is like, you are supposed to be a holy figure. You're supposed to be a religious person. Why don't you knock all this shit off?
Right.
Tries
to tell him to check himself.
Yeah. Before he wrecks himself. We're cool with the lingo on this show.
You fucking around with the Tsarina, they gonna wreck you.
Yeah.
They find out about it. Yeah.
Well, Okay. So then later on, like some more alleged charges of yet another attempted rape come to light. Apparently, Rasputin had tried to rape a nun.
He's pushing boundaries. He's pushing boundaries. You know, he got rid of.
That's one way of putting it. That's one way of putting it.
I will knock that shit down. That's what he's thinking.
Look at that sexy habit she's wearing.
Yeah.
She was asking for it.
Down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's probably what he thought too.
Sure. But
yeah, so those charges kind of, got out into the public a little bit. And at this point, at least, the Tsar and Tsarina were like, okay, well, maybe we need to, go over here and, back
distance
away slowly
from
Rasputin, because this shit's not good, right? We don't want to be associated with this kind of thing. Now, for about a year, they kind of, stayed at arm's length. They're like, you stay over there with your nun raping, and we will just stay over here with our crumbling aristocracy thing that we're doing. Now, it wasn't until late 1912 that Rasputin was able to re-enter the lives of the Romanovs, and that was because Alexei had another episode. Apparently, they were going on vacation, and he suffered some kind of it was a rowing accident. And he, started bleeding uncontrollably. Then they had to, take him back to the house. And they were, in the carriage. And it was bumping him around. And he was, flipping. He was, in horrible agony. And he actually was starting to say shit about, it's okay if I die. It's I can't take the pain anymore. And all this other kind of stuff. So, in desperation, they called Rasputin back to tend to the boy. At which point, allegedly, the boy, again, stopped bleeding. So we don't know. Rasputin somehow did something that made everything okay again. So I said,
telling you, he knew something.
So yeah,
he had some kind of folk remedy.
Maybe he did. I mean, there was some bad shit. There was some bad shit going on.
It was something that acted like aluminum.
I mean, they for real thought that their kid was dying.
Yeah.
And then, as much as they were trying to not associate themselves with Rasputin, at least because, like I said, they were already unpopular. They didn't want to be associated with this dude that was, running around like a crazy person, because there are other accounts that, he would, run out in the street and, say he's possessed by demons or whatever, shit like that, you know what I mean?
That was probably to add to his fucking...
That's what I mean.
His street cred, though.
So he was like a crazy guy.
Look, I can get possessed by a demon and I can exercise myself and everyone can see this shit. That's my power.
Yeah.
But you do it, of course, when you're drunk. That's when you do it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, so evidently they call Rasputin back and he kind of fixes it. But still the Tsar is kind of like, okay, well, let's kind of keep this on the down low because he doesn't have the best reputation and we don't have the best reputation. So we don't want to be guilt by association. So, awesome. But then Rasputin allegedly goes around with stories about, oh, well, I can have sex with the Tsarina whenever I want to and all this other kind of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, even at this point, Alexandra was still inclined to support him. I mean, she seemed to genuinely think that he was a saint, that he had mystical powers. I mean, she would say well, saints have always been reviled, everyone always hated them, so this is just another case of that, and shit like that. So there was this whole kind of situation going on.
Yeah, mystical powers over that ass.
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Perhaps he did.
That's what it was, yeah.
Perhaps he did.
We'll see. We'll see what happens to Mr. Rasputin here in a bit, because I think he's playing with fire, if you ask me.
Well...
Because I can see this shit coming, you know what I mean? I'm a man of, nearly 50 years of age, and I can see where this shit is going.
Well, you could see it coming because
everybody
knows what happened to Rasputin.
But I would have known.
And what happened to the Romanovs.
Yeah, I would have known. I could have seen where this shit was coming. Okay. Yeah. I can see where this shit's going. I don't understand why a man I think he probably knew where it was going, but of course he has to live it up.
He did, because he actually did make a prophecy about that he knew he was going to die, and he thought that the whole Romanov family was going to die also.
Yeah, he knew.
So he kind of knew what the score was, I think. Maybe he was just trying to get it all in there. But I think he literally was probably a crazy person.
Yeah, but he wasn't so crazy he couldn't see what was happening.
He wasn't dumb and crazy are not mutually exclusive.
He could see what was happening. He knew that the country was going to shit. And that the royal family he could play with them, and that he would eventually be killed.
Yeah.
He knew.
Well, and the thing about it, and this is really sad because
he couldn't stand the temptation though.
Yeah.
He had to play with it.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing.
But one thing that's interesting is that Pierre Gilliard, I think his name is, he was like a tutor for the Romanov children, and he knew Rasputin quite well, and he said that the Tsar didn't really approve of having Rasputin around, but he felt like if he sent him away, then the Tsarina would blame him if Alexei died.
Right. Makes sense.
So there was that whole shit happening.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So then, as you said, World War I breaks out in 1914. Now, interestingly, the same day that Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, which was one of the many things that led to World War I breaking out.
Some people might say, why did World War I happen? Was it nationalism? No, it wasn't. They'll tell you nationalism started World War I. What really started World War I was mutual defense pacts. You know what I mean? They had all these pacts and agreements. If you get attacked, we'll stand behind you. So all it took was one bad thing to happen, and all these mutual defense pacts would kick in, and they all started fighting each other. So it wasn't nationalism, really. More like globalism.
Well, see, the thing about any kind of historical incident, because even when you learn about World War I, you're like, oh, Franz Ferdinand's assassination, and that was like a big thing. But it's never just one thing. I mean, sometimes it's one thing that's just like the straw that broke the camel's back. There was all this shit that was leading up to it, and I think that was the case in this. But what I was going to say... Mutual defense pacts
was like a powder keg. You know what I mean? They had all agreed to back one another. So all it took was one thing, and no one could back out. They all had to fight each other. Go ahead.
But what I was going to say was that the same day that Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, someone attempted to assassinate Rasputin. Yeah. Now, this was a prostitute. She didn't have a nose because apparently one of her clients, quote unquote, had cut her nose off. Damn. For some fucking... Because
she did something bad.
Because dudes are the best.
Well, she did something bad.
No, she didn't.
It was back in the day. That's how you dealt with shit back in the day. Yeah, okay. We don't know the people involved. She might have bit somebody or did something bad, and
Even so, nobody deserves to get their fucking nose cut off.
No one deserves
except Ted Bundy or BT.
No one deserves anything. Just shit happens.
But I'm just saying. So she didn't have a nose. So somebody paid her to assassinate Rasputin. Now apparently, she goes up to him.
She needed money.
And, well, she was a prostitute.
So without a nose.
So somebody said, hey, you want to, kill this dude? She's like, all right.
Yeah.
You going to give me however much money? I don't know how much money it was.
Maybe she could buy a fake nose with it.
Now, she goes, and he sees her, coming. She goes and waits by his church or whatever. And then he comes out, and he sees her standing over there, and she's, looking at him. And then she comes up to him and just stabs the shit. She stabbed him in the stomach a bunch of times and then reached her hand into his stomach and pulled his intestines out.
No shit. She's hardcore.
That's what I mean.
The woman's fucking hardcore.
This noseless woman is a hero. Well, almost. Because he didn't die.
She's a hero?
No.
This shit was murder. Come on.
I'm just saying.
Attempted murder. So
she pulls his intestines out.
Yeah.
And yet... And this is another thing that contributes to his mystique of the man that couldn't die and stuff like that. He gets fucking stabbed multiple times in the abdomen and pulls into his intestines out, and he lived.
She must have had some clean ass hands because
he would have got infection.
Yeah,
I would think.
She must have some clean ass.
Well,
hands.
maybe his insides were already so infected that they were just oh, another one. All right, whatever.
Damn.
Because he was a dirty motherfucker. Yeah. He was probably immune to it.
Yeah. He had a good.
See, so he was thinking ahead. He's like, you know what? If I never bathe and never wash any of the dirt off,
strong ass immune system.
Then I'll have a really strong immune system. He wasn't so stupid. He knew. So yeah.
Dumb, but he's not that dumb.
Yeah. Exactly. So she pulls his intestines out, but he survives. So, however, he is in the hospital convalescing during the time when Tsar Nicholas really could have used some words of wisdom about what we should do about the outbreak of World War I. Now, one thing that Rasputin did tell the Tsar was that if Russia goes to war, it will be the end of the monarchy, of the Romanovs, and of Russian institutions.
He was correct.
And he was correct about
yeah.
that. Now, he actually advised Nicholas to not go to war, but Nicholas did not listen.
I think I would have fucking not gone to war, actually, in World War One.
Yeah, because it really didn't go so well.
No.
For Russia, it didn't go so well. So that's what a lot of people have said. It's like maybe he should have listened to Rasputin and history would have been different. But he did not listen to Rasputin in this situation. This was probably like the first time he didn't really listen to his counsel. So obviously, as everyone who's studied World War I knows, World War I was really, really not good for Russia. Millions and millions of people died. I'm
not sure how many Russians died in that, though.
At least a million.
At least a million?
At least.
Okay.
Maybe more.
I'm not sure.
And
I never really studied it from their point of view.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, they thought that it wasn't going to drag on as long as it did. I don't think anyone...
thought it was going to be a quick war, actually.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected it to go on as long as it went on. So, so many deaths, stuff like that. And at this stage, like I said, the Romanovs were already fairly unpopular. And at this stage, particularly the Tsarina became suspect because she was German. People thought she was a spy. Also, people didn't like her association with Rasputin because he had a very bad reputation also. So there was this whole thing going, and there was this whole thing brewing about the imperial family, and we need to do something about that. So because of all the shit that was going on about, like I said, the Tsarina being German and about her, supposedly being influenced too much by Rasputin, who a lot of the people, whether they were, just regular people or whether they were nobles, really didn't like the fact that this peasant from Siberia, who they considered to be like a crazy sexual deviant, was kind of like running the country. Whether he was or not, I doubt it. But that was
running the country.
That was the impression that they wanted to give.
Right.
So there was a lot of like dissension and like, we need to get rid of this dude. Now, this one politician, his name was Vladimir Hershkovitz, and he gets up in front of the Duma, which was like the legislative body, which was something that Tsar Nicholas had established grudgingly. He didn't really believe in democracy. He didn't really think that it would work, and he didn't want to do that. But, since it was, I guess it was a lot of popular support, so he finally was just like, fine, even though I think I have godlike right to rule, whatnot. So Hershkovitz stands up and says, this guy is pretty much controlling the government. We need to take him out. And he had a lot of popular support for that opinion. So there is a prince named Felix Yusupov, and he decides to take it upon himself to assassinate Rasputin.
Yeah, I remember this.
So he's actually the husband of Nicholas's niece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think is how that family thing goes. So the niece was named Irina Alexandrovna. I think is.
And if I remember, this guy's vaguely military. I think he did some military stuff before this.
Perhaps. Yeah.
I think it's just been a long time, since I've studied the details of this case.
So he gets together with a Grand Duke named Dmitry Pavlovich, who was actually a cousin of Nicholas, Tsar Nicholas, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to take Rasputin out. Now, the story goes, and like I said, sources differ on this, so I'm not sure how historically accurate it is. Story goes that Yusupov says, okay, well, I know that he has a thing for my wife, who is Irina, who was supposed, I've seen pictures of her, she was very beautiful.
Yeah, all the Romanovs actually were all good-looking people.
Yeah.
These were good-looking people. Yeah.
So he's like, so I'm going to invite him to like a party, on the pretense of like meeting her or something like that. But like I said, this is how the story goes. So they invite him to this party. They have it set up. There's like nobody in this basement, but the dining room's all set up as though there has been a party. And he's like, he tells Rasputin, he's like, oh, well, she's upstairs, like, saying goodbye to her guests or whatever. We'll just like stay down here and we'll eat and drink and we'll wait for her to come down. So evidently they had like a whole bunch of little cakes or petit fours or whatever, and these were all laced with cyanide.
Damn.
So they sit Rasputin down, and Rasputin, who is obviously never one to turn down free dessert, as, you know, why would you?
Yeah.
So he starts chowing down on the shit. Now, even though there was reportedly enough cyanide in these cakes to kill at least 3 men, he just keeps eating them and is happy as a pig in shit. And nothing seems to be happening. So the 2 conspirators like, well, shit, okay, let's give him some wine then. So they give him this Madeira wine, which is also laced with cyanide. Apparently he drinks 3 glasses of the shit, also has no effect other than him getting a little bit drunker.
I'm calling bullshit on this, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just
go
saying.
ahead. Good.
So at this stage... They're like watching him, and they're just like watching him in amazement. They're like, we have given him enough poison to kill several horses and a whale, and he's still sitting there eating and drinking like nothing is happening. So finally they're just like, well, let's just shoot him.
The thing is, though, is that cyanide is cyanide. You can't build a resistance to cyanide.
You can't.
So I'm thinking that this is some kind of a legend. The shooting part is not a legend, but I think
reportedly.
I think it's kind of you cannot build a resistance to cyanide.
Yeah.
Cyanide kills your fucking ass.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is overblown.
This might be like for real. He was shot and he was thrown in the river.
And they probably did give him some cyanide, but
maybe they did, but maybe it wasn't as much as
they're saying.
Said.
Right.
But in their accounts, they're saying, look, we gave him enough to kill several men. He still acted like it didn't do anything. So we decided, okay, fuck it. We're just going to shoot him.
I would believe the story if you could build up a resistance to cyanide. And I haven't seen any evidence that you can build up a resistance to cyanide.
Yeah.
You eat cyanide, you start to suffocate. You
like
can't,
some other poisons
you can't breathe.
Can, but I don't think
Yeah, not that one. That one's bad.
But so,
that'll tear you up.
Supposedly what happened next was that so they decided to shoot him. So he points a revolver at Rasputin. Rasputin, reportedly, gets up and just like looks at him and just stands there. He doesn't attempt to run. He just looks there and he's not like afraid or anything. Yeah. So he shoots him in the chest. Rasputin falls down on the ground. Now after a few minutes, this is just like a horror movie, yo. So he goes over there and kind of leans over him to make sure he's dead, and Rasputin's eyes open. And he grabs him, like, by the throat, and starts fighting, and then the guy's like, fuck! And then, he runs away, and, he runs away, like, the bitch is still alive! We poisoned the shit out of him, we shot him, and he's still alive.
Now, could you find any evidence about what kind of pistol this was, what the caliber was?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I can explain that. Okay. There were a lot of weak calibers during this era. Your average caliber during this era was on par with like what you would know today as 32 ACP, which is a very, very light caliber. You could absorb several hits of 32 ACP. Okay, the wound profile is very similar to an ice pick. You know what I mean? It doesn't fuck up a lot of flesh. It's just penetration. If it's not really in the right spot, it doesn't damage a lot of tissue. You know, so you can take it. So maybe he was shot. Some kind of a Russian 38 revolver.
Well, he definitely was. At least 3 times.
Yeah, there were Russian 38 revolvers and 30 caliber type revolvers and 35s that had kind of ballistic profiles of something like 32. It's probably what he got hit with. You could survive that. Shot placement would be of paramount importance with a weak caliber like that. So go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that that's not that unbelievable.
So apparently, like I said, in a horror movie, like he apparently gets shot, he gets back up. Because they're like looking at him for a while and it's like, okay, he's dead. But then they lean over him and he's like, ah, no, I'm not dead. Yeah. So then they run upstairs and they're like freaking out and everything like that. Then Rasputin gets up and runs out the door and he's out in the courtyard. So they run after him and then they shoot his ass again. Now this time they shoot him like right in the fucking forehead. At which point he falls to the ground. They kind of like take him, they wrap him up in a thing. They take him to a bridge and throw him off into a river, which was like covered with ice, but there was like a fishing hole. So they threw him in the frozen ice. Now, a day or two later, they finally find Rasputin's body, and yes, he is finally dead. See, here's the thing. I saw 2 different documentaries about this, and like I said, different sources and stuff like that. One source said that the autopsy report said that the cause of death was the gunshot in the forehead.
Right.
The other one said that the autopsy report said that the cause of death was drowning, meaning that he was still alive when he was thrown into the water.
That's plausible.
Which is plausible. Right. It might have been. But
you could be shot in the head with a small caliber bullet and be rendered unconscious in a coma, fall into the water, and breathe in some water.
Yeah.
Very, very plausible.
So,
the calibers of those days were weak by today's standards.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, like I said, there are so many, like, legends surrounding, like, the man that couldn't die and stuff. I think even one, like, fucking documentary I saw about Rasputin was called The Man That Couldn't Die. Just because it was, like, poison and gunshots and fucking drowning or whatever. But, I don't know. He was certainly stubborn and was certainly a badass. I mean, as far as I know, he was shot at least 3 times. I'm pretty sure that most of the sources I saw said the autopsy report said he had at least 3 gunshots, even though some sources say that it was more than that.
But there's nothing about what gun it was.
Well, I don't know. I didn't see.
Yeah, you didn't see that.
No.
The standard revolver of that time was a Mosin Nagant revolver. It was a gas check revolver. Power level was around like 38 special. That's understandable. But the aristocracy would have carried probably more Western type guns that were harder to get. You know what I mean? More expensive, more elite. They probably would have been small. You're probably talking about stuff like 32 ACP, 25 ACP, and hell yeah, you could take a headshot of 25 ACP and go into a coma.
Yeah.
And breathe in some water. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it might have been a case where maybe they gave him some poison, but it wasn't that much. They maybe shot him 3 or 4 times, but it wasn't enough to kill him. Yeah, maybe he drowned.
Because the aristocrats would have had foreign guns from Western Europe and the United States, and they would have been things like 32 ACP and fucking 25 ACP. That's the rich boy gun for the Russians probably, and they're pretty weak.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But still, like I said,
sounds right.
Well, that and combined with the noseless prostitute stabbing him and pulling his intestines out, like in 1914. I mean, he was obviously a stubborn motherfucker who didn't want to die.
A lot of taking a shot is just willpower. If you're pissed off, you can take a pretty significant hit before you succumb to it.
I think that's kind of one of the hard things too, because Rasputin is such almost a mythical figure at this point. So I feel like some of the shit around his death has been exaggerated. Like I said, yes, it was hard to kill him. Yes, they had to shoot him a bunch of times. Whether or not they poisoned him, I don't know. But I think that adds to his mystique. Yeah. And it definitely added to his mystique in the years following his death, which was in late 1916, if I didn't mention it, because I think people even then thought that he had some kind of magic powers.
I wouldn't say they were magical powers. I believe he did probably ingest some poison. I think he did survive a couple of bullet wounds. But if you really look at the details, a lot of being shot is psychological and how you react to it. I mean, there's a lot of studies that will prove that to you. If you're being shot by smaller calibers, yeah, you can absorb them. Sure, you're hurt. Yeah, you might die of infection. You might die of blood loss. But it might take a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm saying it's plausible.
Yeah.
What they're saying about Rasputin is probably plausible.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously it's plausible because it happened.
Yeah, it's plausible.
It's just that I think in later years, his mystique has grown up to the point where people are exaggerating things to make it look like he was some kind of superhuman.
Yeah, but
he obviously wasn't.
He wasn't superhuman. He wasn't being shot with, say, like 357 Magnum. He wasn't being shot with 45.
They didn't blow his head off.
Yeah, right. These were more sedate antique cartridges that he's being hit with. So, yeah. I wouldn't doubt it. Wouldn't doubt it, not one bit.
So, as I said, Rasputin is assassinated, finally, in December of 1916. Now, in February of 1917, along comes the Russian Revolution. And the Romanov family is pretty much, relieved of their thrones. They abdicate their... Tsar Nicholas abdicates his throne. Now, by all accounts, he was actually kind of relieved about this because, like I said, he wasn't super jazzed about being Tsar. So they were just like, well, you're not Tsar anymore. You're just Nicholas Romanov now, and they sent them off to, like, house arrest. Now, at this point, as I said, the Bolsheviks it was in their interest to keep the family alive because they still had a lot of supporters. They didn't want to look like the bad guys and like having them killed and stuff like that. So they actually kept them alive for a little while. They just moved them around to various locations. They said even when they first sent them to their the first place that they went to, they said actually the guards were pretty friendly toward them. They kind of made friends with them, and like the Romanovs seemed like they were adapting well to the new lifestyle, even though they couldn't really go out or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't a prison. They were in custody. Yeah, they were just in custody. Like they were in like a nice place, but they just couldn't leave. So it was that type of thing. However, as time went on, the Bolsheviks started to think, we can't have them around because what if there are still Tsarist loyalists around? It's
which
like
there were.
Yeah. Not so much in Ekaterinburg, where they were eventually sent and where they were eventually executed. That was a pretty much Bolshevik stronghold. But, they still had enough supporters around that they were reluctant to do anything that would make them look like or make them into martyrs is, the thing that is. So the first place they were sent to, it was like I said, it wasn't a prison. It was a palace. It was called, and please forgive me if I butcher the Russian, but it's called the Tsarskoye Selo, I guess is what it's called. Okay, so they sent them there. That was east of the Ural Mountains. They actually had quite a good time there. Nicholas seemed to like relax a lot. He's like, woo, I don't have to be Tsar anymore. They let him kind of run around outside. They still had their staff. They still had their maids and attendants and things like that. They kept all their personal possessions.
You probably thought it was going to go down the way it went down with the British family, where they're kind of go to the rear and they become
and then they get exiled and they're just like, whatever.
They're like figureheads, and then an elected government runs shit and they're back on welfare, basically.
Yeah. Well, initially, they were led to believe, and they thought that they would actually just be exiled out of the country, and they would be allowed to go live with King George V, who was their cousin, and they would go live with him in Britain, or would be allowed to go to their summer estate, which was in the Crimea. So they weren't particularly concerned. Like I said, they didn't have any stresses anymore. That they weren't ruling the shit. So everything was fine. And as I said, the kids seemed to be into it from all accounts. And like I was saying about Anastasia before, since she was the one that kind of got a lot more famous later on because of people claiming to be her in later years.
Yeah, they were claiming to be her on Geraldo.
Yeah.
Of all things. I could growing up, the bitches on Geraldo. I am Anastasia. It's fucking hilarious.
I mean, by all accounts, she was a very funny child. She was a prankster.
Good looking. You look at the photographs.
They're all beautiful. They were all beautiful kids. And I think that's
why everyone was claiming to be Anastasia.
Well, and I think that was kind of the reason too why this story like resonates with so many people. It's like, they'll look at all these little good looking little kids.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them weren't little kids; they were teenagers.
Down to like 7 and 9.
Yeah, I think Anastasia was 16 or 17. I think when they were.
I've seen so
murdered.
many pictures over the years. I don't remember how old they were. Anastasia was about 16 when she was killed.
Yeah, 16 or 17. I can't remember. So as I said, at first the Romanovs were actually treated pretty well. They were under house arrest essentially. They were at a palace and blah blah blah. The guard that was kind of in charge of their care was pretty sympathetic toward them, and wasn't mean to them or anything like that. However, They eventually ended up getting sent to this place called Ipatiev House in Ekaterinburg, which was a very, as I said before, a very anti-czarist, very strong communist stronghold. However, when they moved there first, they still had the same fine treatment. They still had their, servants and everything like that. But then the Bolsheviks in the area assigned another guard to look after them. And this guy was named Yakov Yarovsky. This guy was not sympathetic to the Romanov family at all. And he basically, he didn't treat them badly. He just maintained a very, hands-off kind of you're my prisoner type of thing. He was very distant and professional.
Right.
And he kind of, stopped the other guards from fraternizing with them. He basically cracked down.
Right.
And he's like, this is very rule based and stuff like that.
Bitch became institutional on it.
Well, and ironically, the former Tsar Nicholas actually kind of liked this guy, even though this was the guy that was going to be in charge of their execution.
Shit.
Spoiler alert.
Guess he respected his professionalism or something.
I suppose, yeah, I think that's what it was. So, by all accounts, the last people to see the Romanovs alive were actually 4 cleaning women. And they came in to clean the house prior to the I don't know why they were cleaning it prior to the execution. Maybe it was just a cleaning that they were doing. Anyway, but these were 4 cleaning women, and they came in. And they were talking about... the Romanovs had no idea that they were going to be assassinated. They were pretty much like, oh, well, we're just being held here for our safety because, we're unpopular. We're going to be sent into exile. It'll all be fine. She said they were all in good spirits. They were acting totally normal. They were getting bored because they were kind of confined and stuff like that. But other than that, they seemed to have no clue of their imminent demise.
Yeah.
So these 4 women were thought to be the last civilians to have seen them alive. Now, on July 16th, there was a telegram that arrived in Moscow and that was addressed to Lenin and said, okay, well, we've decided that we're going to kill the whole family because we can't have them around, just in case of sympathizers or whatever.
Yeah, and they were afraid that if they exiled them, that later on, people would say, well, we could get rid of these communists and bring the royal family back. Right. So they wanted to make sure that there was that this was a point of no return. That they were gone and that's it. So that's what they were going to do.
So the decision was made. Evidently, Lenin said it was okay. And plus, there was a couple of different factions, the red and the white, and they were fighting in the city. So they were like, okay, well, they're getting too much trouble at this point, so let's just liquidate them.
Right.
So evidently, the whole family are woken up about 1:30 in the morning and are told to go down to the cellar. There are a bunch of chairs against the wall.
Yep.
And they just told us, they said, you're being moved here for your own safety because of all these internecine fighting and stuff like that. So, just sit here and wait. And then before they could even react to whatever was going on, everyone just started opening fire.
Yeah, jumped in there with guns and shot them all.
Yeah. 103 shots. That's what I heard. 103 shots. Now, interestingly, here's the creepy part. Now, they shot Nicholas first. I believe they just shot him in the head. They did chest shots and they did head shots at the end to make sure. But when they shot the girls, they shot them in the chest first, but apparently they didn't die right away because what they had done, they all had corsets on like you did at the time, but they had taken a lot of the crown jewels and stuff like that and had sewn them into their corsets. And apparently this acted like a bulletproof vest to some extent. So when they were shot in the chest, it knocked them down, but it didn't kill them. So later on, the guards apparently went back, shot them in the head, hit them with rifle butts or with the bayonets or whatever to make sure they were all dead. And apparently the room was full of smoke and there was all screaming and all this other kind of shit.
I'm actually going to call bullshit on that. Because what they would have used Mosin Nagant rifles to do this, which is 7.62 by 54R. That's a cartridge set kind of 30-06. there's nothing you could sew into a corset to absorb that.
I'm just saying that's part of
That's myth, if you ask me. They were fucking just gunned down with a major caliber out of bolt action rifles, and were just cut to ribbons. You know, that's what I'm gonna tell you happened, because I can imagine it. You know what I mean? There were probably a lot of shots, but they probably didn't, like you said. What would you say was 100 and something shots?
103.
But I guarantee you that was over a period of time, because you couldn't work those bolt action.
They said it took about 20 minutes.
Yeah, you couldn't work that. You couldn't work those bolt actions that fast.
I mean, according to people that were
depending on how many guys there, they probably reloaded a couple times. They would just shoot them to pieces after they were dead.
Yeah.
That's probably what was really
and I
to make sure that they were dead.
And I have a picture here, and I'll show it. Like, there is a picture of the room.
Yeah.
After the bodies.
The whole thing about
it's been kind of cleaned and stuff, but
the whole thing about having crown jewels hidden inside the corsets, acting as a book. That sounds like an embellishment to me, because I can imagine that. You can't stop that round. It's a major rifle round, and that's what the Bolsheviks were using, I believe, at that time, because it was like 1880s that came out, and that's what they would have used.
Yeah.
As a fucking big rifle round, then go through 30 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a major caliber rifle, like 30-06, really.
And, I mean, it should be noted, too, that it wasn't just the Romanov family that were killed. It was also their attendants. It was their physician. It was, like, their maids, their attendants. And from some sources that I read, it's like these are people that chose to accompany them when
Loyal
they went
supporters.
Into exile.
Yeah.
And they were gunned down as well.
Loyal supporters.
So it ended up being 11 people killed. Yeah. That was 11
They would have
people.
been personal friends and loyal supporters and shit.
Yeah,
it's a sad story.
It
because
is.
if you ask me...
I mean, even if they did shitty things, like those kids didn't fucking deserve that.
Yeah, and if you ask me, the Romanovs really, especially the kids, they did nothing to deserve all this, and you didn't have to kill them. Their murders were symbolic, really. You know what I mean? They could have exiled them. But
yeah. Well, that's what they were gonna do, and then they decided in the end.
They wanted to make sure the Russian people had no hope. That's what the Bolsheviks wanted. You know what I mean? They did not want to go back to a monarchy. I think it worked against them. The Soviet Union probably, and Russia probably would have been better off to do what England did, which was to keep their royal family as like a historical, you know what I'm talking about? Like a historical...
or like a symbolic kind of...
Like a symbolic...
figurehead type of thing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a memoir of the past.
Yeah.
But the Soviet Union was so Marxist in their way of fucking erasing history that they killed these people really for nothing. The Soviet Union probably and Russia probably would have been better off if they just retired them. You know
well,
what I mean?
and it seems like they could have done that because even though... I mean, and now we know they gunned them all down in that cellar. Like I said, the Romanov family and all their attendants, their physician and everything like that, they killed them all. And then they loaded them all in a truck and they took them and they buried them, you know, tried to burn the bodies with sulfuric acid, with fire, shit like that.
Yeah.
They didn't know that until much later on. But the thing is that after that happened, they knew that there would still be some sympathizers. So what they would say was that they only killed the Tsar.
Yeah.
But that the wife and kids were sent off to live to a secret place and we can't tell you where they are. Yeah. So it seems dumb that they killed all of those people and then still told people that they were alive when they could have just left them alive.
It's probably because
and done what they said that they had done.
Probably because after they did it, they realized that it was a mistake.
Yeah.
You know,
because like I said, it seemed like a last minute decision.
It's a sign of insecurity.
Yeah.
If the Soviet Union and communism was so great, you wouldn't have had to kill the royal family. You could have just, you know what I mean, made them abdicate, and you would have moral superiority, and you would have ruled as a communist government over the new empire. That's really how they should have done it, if you ask me.
But like I said, it seems like they weren't thinking super clearly.
They weren't thinking ahead.
And it seemed like a decision that it was kind of made on the spur of the moment.
The Soviet Union, during its early period, that first 30 years was fucking chaos. You know what I mean? Stalin.
Well, clearly.
Yeah. The shit Stalin did, it just shows you right there that they weren't thinking.
So the thing is, because, you know, the incoming communist government were so secretive about what had ultimately happened to the Romanovs, there were many, many rumors swirling that most of them had survived or had gone into exile. Probably the most popular ones said to have been survived were the two youngest ones, which were Anastasia and Alexei. Even though you'd think, I mean, if Alexei had been shot, he would have bled to death almost immediately because he had hemophilia. But there were a lot of people that came forward in later years saying that they were Alexei and stuff like that. Probably the most famous, though, was people coming forward saying they were Anastasia.
Yeah.
And that went on for many years. And like I said, the book that I showed you guys at the beginning of the show, this came out in the early 1970s, I think 1974 or something like that. And at this point, none of the Romanov bodies had been found. So they were speculating that some of them could still be alive. I mean, everyone was pretty sure that Nicholas was dead because even the Bolsheviks said, yeah, we killed him. But even they were cagey about what had happened to the rest of them.
They were embarrassed.
Yes, they didn't want to say that. They didn't mind saying they'd killed the former Tsar.
Right.
But they didn't want to be seen as like killing like a woman or kids.
Those pretty little girls.
And stuff. So there was a lot of... So because they were so secretive about it, rumors circulated for a long time that some of them were still alive. And in some ways, it gave people like hope that, maybe things weren't so bad. Maybe they were still alive somewhere. So I think that's why a lot of... And shit... later on, the story of like all these people that came forward saying they were Anastasia, it was even, they made it into plays, it was in a movie, like Ingrid Bergman was in a movie about it, they made a fucking Disney cartoon about it called Anastasia, before they really knew what had happened to her.
All this is a testimony, it's a testament, really, to the weakness and insecurity of the early Soviet Empire and communism. What would have been better, is to have the communist revolution and then 20 years later have the Russian royal family come out publicly and say how awesome communism in the Soviet Empire was. That's really what they should have done, But they were scared. They couldn't let those people live.
Well, it's always better if something's good to like let its kind of goodness just speak for itself. Don't just... I feel like if you're just like trying to shit on other people or trying to shit on like the opposite thing to you, then that's probably...
The Russian royal family was actually weak. You know what I mean? They weren't great, but...
like I said, I think this shit was probably inevitable.
Yeah.
I don't think Rasputin had that big a thing. I don't think this was just. It was
Times
the way
had changed.
Yeah, it was the way that Shrew was going to go.
Right.
It's like those people were just the ones that happened to be around at the time.
They were in the crossfire.
They were just like kind of subsumed under larger forces. I think that happened a lot.
It was a shame.
Yeah. So the only other thing I want to say is I want to kind of talk about this one woman who for many, many years, and like I said, this book kind of went into this too, for many years was thought to be Anastasia. Now, she was actually, she was fished out of a canal in Berlin in 1920. She didn't remember who she was. She had a very thick Russian accent. She couldn't remember her name. She couldn't remember what had happened to her. She had like a bunch of wounds. Like her back was all all cut up, and she had like all kind of like fucked up shit. She had lost her memory. So they took her to a mental asylum, and she was there for a couple of years, and claimed that she had no memory of who she was or what had happened to her. Now the story goes that 2 years after this woman was fished out of the canal, this other woman shows up at the mental asylum who was Russian, and she saw her and said, "That's Anastasia," and like bowed in front of her and all this other kind of stuff. Now, like I said, sources differ because some sources say that she claimed to be Anastasia, but most other sources say that she said she didn't remember who she was, and it was just this other woman that came there that said, "I think that's Anastasia," and then she was like, "Oh, maybe I am."
Yeah, and for you younger listeners, this whole Anastasia thing is a cultural phenomenon that goes way back.
It was a huge deal.
Okay. There are even Rolling Stones lyrics about sympathy for the devil. Says Anastasia screamed in pain.
Yeah.
This goes all the way back to the 60s and even the 50s that people were hoping that Anastasia had survived.
That the two youngest kids were not dead, that they had been spared.
There were people that kept coming forward claiming to be Anastasia. Really all on the back of a pretty photograph of the damn girl, you know what I mean? And hope that this girl had survived. She was a sad figure. It's a tragic figure.
Yeah.
You know,
and it was
people hoped that she had lived.
Yeah, it was wishful thinking, which we know now because, like, at the time this book was written that first kind of got me into this whole Anastasia thing, was that no one knew what had happened to her. It's like, and later on, like, one of the guards that was supposedly at the assassination said, you know, I loaded all the bodies on the truck, and then one of the, you know, Anastasia was still alive. Yeah. So I sent her away, like, to live with another family, like, named Tchaikovsky and stuff.
Yeah, there were all these rumors that there were, like, sympathetic Bolshevik type soldiers
that had got the youngest kids out of there.
And they were looking for her, and it ended up to a bunch of mentally ill fakers and shit.
Which
Girls
is sad
coming
because,
forward going, I'm Anastasia.
Like I said, for a long time, and it almost seemed, because here's the thing, they found a mass grave in, actually, amateur, like, archaeologists found it in 1979, but no one really knew about it until 1989, because, like I said, if you're as old as we are, remember back in the old days, like,
Soviet Union was so fucking Union,
they were very secretive. They didn't want anybody to know. Right, they didn't want anybody knowing anything. Yeah. So until, like, Gorbachev came along and the whole Glasnost thing and everything like that. Yeah. Like, they were kind of keeping everything on the DL. So even though this mass grave had been found, which people thought was the Romanovs, had been found in the late 1970s, nobody really knew about it until 1989, 1991. And then they started doing, like, testing on all these skeletons. Now, at this point, in 1991, they determined that the skeletons of the Tsar were in there, the Tsarina were in there, the two oldest girls were in there, and then there was another female skeleton in there, which they said could either be Maria or could be Anastasia, but they weren't really sure. So since they weren't sure, people were like, oh, that means that Anastasia and Alexei could still be alive because they're not in the grave. They weren't in the grave with the other ones. Yeah. So, you know, so that kind of, like, fueled it when that shit happened. However, years later, somebody else that was, like, fucking around in another part of, like, Siberia that was kind of near where the other burial site was, but not really, stumbled across two more skeletons. And these had kind of been burned with fire, also burned with sulfuric acid. This was a male and a female, and later DNA tests, because as I said, this was the Romanov family, they're related to many of the other royal families of Europe, so they were easily able to get DNA from various other royals, and they were able to determine that the male skeleton was definitely Alexei, and the female skeleton was either Anastasia or Maria, meaning that the one in the original grave was either Anastasia or Maria, and accounting for all of the Romanov family. Yeah. So it seems that all of them were killed at the same time. It just happened that two of them, the youngest ones, perhaps, were buried in a different grave. Perhaps because they had thrown them off the truck and tried to burn them and that didn't work out, or then they went to another grave. I don't know why that happened. But they were buried in two separate places. But at this point, in case you didn't know, as of 2008, DNA has definitively proven that Anastasia and Alexei have been found. The entire Romanov family has been accounted for, and they were all assassinated on that night in 1918.
They were gunned down in a damn basement.
Yeah. So the sad thing, though, about the woman that claimed to be Anastasia until her death, and I was watching a documentary about her earlier that day. I'm not super sure, like I said, she didn't really seem to remember. They were able to find out who she was later on. They actually were able to determine that she was actually a woman named Franziska Shanskowska. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That she was Polish, and that she'd been a factory worker. Okay. Now, what they think happened to her was that this factory that she had been working at, she worked there with a bunch of her friends and with her husband, and that this factory had been bombed or, like, had been hit by a grenade, and that she had seen her husband die and seen a bunch of her coworkers die, and she had been injured by the shrapnel, and then had subsequently lost her memory, and had thrown herself off a bridge. or perhaps lost her memory after throwing herself off the bridge, whatever. So they're not sure how culpable she could be about her claiming to be Anastasia. Because, like I said, when she first arrived at the mental hospital, she said she didn't know who she was. And evidently it was only this other person coming to the mental hospital later that said, oh, I think that's Anastasia. And she's like, oh, maybe so. Because she had all these wounds and she had obviously been through a traumatic experience that she couldn't remember. And she was about the right age. She looked kind of like her.
And of course, that would have been a very romantic figure to adopt.
Yeah.
Go, yeah, that is me.
And the thing is,
yeah,
some members...
I am a fucking princess.
Some members of the Romanov family did come to see her and said, yeah, that seems like her.
Yeah.
Then again, some of the other ones, like some of their French tutor and stuff said, no, that's not her. The personality, she's not like her.
Right.
Even though it had been many years later, he's like, I don't think that's her. So there was like this whole thing, but she had enough supporters within the extended family that they... Right. Gave her a pretty nice life for the rest. She, met a history teacher in Virginia and married him, and they lived a very nice, comfortable life, until she died. So, I don't know. I feel like I can't begrudge her because maybe if she really didn't remember who she was and all these people were saying she was Anastasia and it was giving her a nice life, she might have been like, well, maybe I am. And it's like, maybe she didn't feel that
she
bad.
She wasn't. No, Anastasia was killed on that same night.
That's what I mean. She wasn't, but
gunned down by Bolsheviks.
But nobody knew that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this woman was dead long before they found out what had really happened. But like I said, in case you weren't aware, they have found the bodies. All of the Romanovs were killed.
It was a shame. You had Russians.
Lived.
You had Russians gunning down big figures from their history. They're now lost forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They killed their royal family. Most countries still retain in Europe retain their royal families as monuments to the past. There was no reason why communist Russia couldn't have done the same thing. I think that would have added, actually, to communist Russia to say, oh, yeah, our royal family, we have them.
Yeah.
We're strong enough and we're secure enough to know that we can still keep these people around. Everyone wants communism.
Yeah.
The reason why they killed them is because people would rather choose monarchy over communism. Communism was not good.
Yeah.
We're old enough to remember what the Soviet Union was actually like in reality. I saw it crumble. I was in the army during the time. Our units used to deal with the fucking Soviet army. They were a trusted opponent and a professional opponent. You knew what they were going to do. In some ways, it was a different world. It was almost kind of like a better world when you kind of had the Soviet Union. You could trust them to be your adversary. It's all gone now. It's chaos now, but...
Anyway, so in 2000, actually, the Russian Orthodox Church actually canonized the Romanov family.
Yeah.
And they've all been laid to rest in St. Petersburg, as a czar would be. So, they've kind of been given their rightful place in history, despite the whole controversy about what happened to them and whatnot. So that's how that went. I guess that's probably, we'll wrap it up at this point, because we've probably gone on long enough.
Yeah.
And you're probably, deep into the Kukulkan, it seems.
I'm deep into Kukulkan, and I'm thinking about the damn Russians. You know what I mean? The Russians were a good people. They went through a lot of fucking hard shit. And, you know what I mean? I don't have anything against them. I remember everything. We dealt with their military after the fucking collapse of the fucking Soviet Union. My unit ended up getting some of their fucking helicopters for testing. It's a long story. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, I should say too, other than them canonizing the Romanov family, also the last house where they were kept, Ipatiev House, they actually tore that down and then they put a church there. So that's kind of nice. All right, so let's wrap up this show about Rasputin and the Romanovs. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 135. And remember, if you like the show, please like, share, subscribe on all your social media. It really helps us out a lot. If you'd like to financially support the show, which would help us out even more, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clock podcast. If you don't like Patreon, you can go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a little button in the sidebar that says PayPal, donate through PayPal, so you can push on that and give a one-time donation if you would like to do that. Also, remember, check out our last movie review, which was the 1990 Joel Schumacher flick, Flatliners. Also check out our Zazzle store, which is zazzle.com/13o'clock, which has a whole bunch of t-shirts, including the Running with KukulCon one, which took me a really long time to make, but is up there now. Also check out my board games and card games at thegamecrafter.com and look for Giallo games. I have 3 games up there with expansion packs and stuff like that, all based around Italian Giallo movies like murder mysteries and stuff like that. So if you're into that kind of shit, then check it out. And that will do it for episode 135. We will see you next time. Bye.